This is the story of Maria and Carlos Santos, a couple who arrived in the UK with nothing but 2 suitcases and a dream. When they landed at Heathrow in 2015, they spoke barely any English. They had £800 between them, no jobs, no connections, no safety net. People told them they were mad, that they should go back to Brazil, that immigrants like them would never make it in Britain. 8 years later, Maria and Carlos own a £220,000 house in Essex. They run a successful cleaning business with 15 employees. They drive a brand new car. Their 2 children go to excellent schools. How did they do it? The truth is more inspiring than you could ever imagine. This is their story. Maria was 28 and Carlos was 31 when they made the decision to leave Brazil. They were living in Sao Paulo, in a small flat in the Zona Leste. Carlos worked as a security guard at a shopping center, earning about £400 a month. Maria cleaned houses, making roughly the same. They worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. They barely scraped by. The rent alone took half their income. Food, transport, bills, there was never anything left at the end of the month. No savings, no future, just survival. But they had a dream. They'd heard stories about the UK, about opportunities, about the possibility of building a real life if you were willing to work hard. Carlos's cousin had moved to London 3 years earlier and kept telling them, "Come, you can make it here. It's tough, but it's possible." In March 2015, Maria and Carlos made the biggest decision of their lives. They sold everything they owned: their furniture, their television, Maria's jewelry, a gold necklace her grandmother had given her. They borrowed money from family members, promising to pay it back. They bought 2 one-way tickets to London. The night before they left, Maria's mother cried. "You're making a mistake," she said. "You don't speak English. You don't know anyone. What if something goes wrong?" Carlos's father was even more direct. "You'll be back within 6 months. Mark my words. You're throwing away what little you have for a fantasy." But Maria and Carlos had made up their minds. They were tired of just surviving. They wanted to live, to build something, to give their future children opportunities they never had. On April 15th, 2015, they landed at Heathrow Airport with 2 suitcases, £800 in cash, and absolutely no idea what came next. The first 3 months in the UK were hell. Proper hell. Carlos's cousin picked them up from the airport and took them to a house share in East Ham. 6 people living in a 3-bedroom house. Maria and Carlos had the smallest room, barely bigger than a cupboard. They shared a bathroom with 4 strangers. The kitchen was always dirty. There was mold on the walls. But it cost £550 a month, and it was all they could afford. They had 3 months on their tourist visas to sort out work permits, 3 months to find jobs, 3 months to prove everyone wrong. The language barrier was worse than they had expected. Maria had studied English for a year before coming, but the reality of actually speaking it every day was overwhelming. People spoke so fast. The accents were difficult. She'd ask someone to repeat themselves 3 times and still not understand. Carlos struggled even more. His English was basic at best. He'd learned phrases by heart: "Good morning," "Thank you," "Where's the toilet?" But any conversation beyond that left him lost and frustrated. They spent their first week walking around East London looking for help wanted signs in shop windows. They went to employment agencies. They printed CVs at the library, CVs that nobody read because they had no UK experience, no references, nothing to offer except willingness to work. After 2 weeks of rejection, they were getting desperate. The £800 was disappearing fast. Rent, food, transport, they were down to $400 and still hadn't found work. Then Maria saw a sign in the window of a cleaning company in Stratford. "Cleaners needed. Immediate start. No experience necessary. She walked in, her hands shaking, and spoke to the manager, a Polish woman named Magda, who'd been in the UK for 10 years. "You cleaned before?" Magda asked. "Yes," Maria said. "In Brazil. Houses. Offices. You start Monday. £7 an hour. Cash in hand until you get your papers sorted." Maria wanted to cry with relief. It wasn't legal, not really. Cash in hand meant no tax, no insurance, working below minimum wage, but it was something. It was a start. Carlos found work 3 days later through a recommendation from someone at the house share. A construction site in Stratford needed laborers. The supervisor didn't ask too many questions. £8 an hour, cash in hand, 12-hour days. They were working illegally, underpaid, exhausted, but they were working. Those first months were brutal. Maria would wake up at 5 a.m., take 2 buses to reach her first cleaning job by 7. She'd clean offices, toilets, kitchens, meeting rooms. The work was hard. Her back ached constantly. Her hands were raw from chemicals. But she smiled, worked fast, never complained. The British workers at the cleaning company resented her. "Coming over here, taking our jobs," one woman muttered loud enough for her to hear. Another refused to show her how to use the floor buffer, hoping she'd make mistakes. But Maria didn't let it break her. She watched, learned, asked the Polish and Romanian workers for help. They understood what it was like to be new, to be foreign, to be treated like you didn't matter. Carlos had it worse. Construction work was back-breaking, lifting heavy materials, working in the rain and cold. The other workers barely spoke to him. When they did, it was to shout orders he didn't always understand. He came home every night exhausted, covered in dust and sweat. His shoulders ached, his hands were blistered, but he never missed a day, never complained, just put his head down and worked. They were both working 60-hour weeks, sometimes more. They'd come home to their tiny room, too tired to even talk properly. They'd heat up cheap food from Aldi, pasta, tinned tomatoes, the cheapest cuts of meat. They couldn't afford to eat out, couldn't afford new clothes, couldn't afford anything except rent and food and bus fares. Every penny they didn't spend, they saved. Maria kept the money in an envelope hidden under their mattress. By the end of their 3rd month, they had £1,200 saved. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd ever managed to save in Brazil. In July 2015, their tourist visas expired. They couldn't go back to Brazil. They'd promised everyone they'd make it work. They'd borrowed money they still hadn't paid back. Going home would mean admitting defeat. So they stayed, became undocumented, illegal immigrants. It was terrifying. Every police siren made their hearts race. Every knock on the door could be immigration enforcement. They lived in constant fear of deportation. But Carlos's cousin knew someone who knew someone. There were immigration lawyers who specialized in helping people like them. It would cost money, £3,000 for both of them, but they could apply for work permits based on their skills. Maria and Carlos used their savings, borrowed more from Carlos's cousin, spent 6 months in legal limbo waiting for their applications to be processed. During that time, they kept working, kept saving, kept pushing forward. In January 2016, their work permits came through. Proper, legal permission to work in the UK. It felt like winning the lottery. Maria immediately applied for a proper contract with the cleaning company, got minimum wage, £7.20 an hour at the time, legal pay, tax deductions, national insurance contributions, a real job. Carlos did the same, found work with a legitimate construction company, £9 an hour, proper hours, safety equipment, respect. For the first time since arriving in the UK, they felt like real people, not shadows hiding from the law, not criminals, just 2 immigrants trying to build a life. But Maria and Carlos weren't content with just surviving. They wanted more. They wanted to build something of their own. Maria started noticing things at the cleaning company, the way jobs were organized, the way clients were treated, the way the Polish manager, Magda, had built her own business from nothing. "I could do this," Maria told Carlos one night. "Start our own cleaning business. We know how to clean. We know clients need reliable, honest workers. We could do it better." Carlos was hesitant. "We don't have money for that. We don't have clients. We barely speak English properly." "We'll learn," Maria said. "We'll figure it out. I didn't come to the UK to clean other people's offices forever. I came to build something." That fire in her eyes, Carlos recognized it. It was the same fire that had made them leave Brazil in the first place. The same determination that had got them through those brutal first months. "Okay," he said, "let's do it." In March 2016, exactly 1 year after arriving in the UK, Maria and Carlos registered their own company, Santos Cleaning Services. They had no clients, no equipment, no vehicle, just a business registration, a basic website Carlos's cousin helped them build, and absolute determination. Maria started small. She'd finish her shift at the cleaning company, then spend evenings printing flyers. She'd post them through letterboxes in East London, cafes, small offices, residential streets. Professional cleaning services, reliable, affordable. Call Maria. For 3 weeks, nothing happened, not a single call. Then, one Wednesday evening, Maria's phone rang. A small cafe in Stratford needed someone to clean every morning before opening. Could she do it? "Yes," Maria said immediately. "When do you need me to start?" "Tomorrow." "I'll be there." Their first client, £40 a week. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Maria cleaned that cafe every single morning for 6 months. Always on time, always thorough, always smiling. The owner was impressed, started recommending her to other businesses nearby. By September 2016, Maria had 5 regular clients. Small businesses, mostly. Cafes, a barbershop, a small accountancy office. She was earning £300 a week from her own business, on top of her regular job. She quit the cleaning company. Magda, her former manager, was actually happy for her. "You're doing what I did 10 years ago. Good luck. You'll need it." Carlos kept his construction job, but helped Maria in the evenings and on weekends. They bought secondhand cleaning equipment from Gumtree, saved up for a cheap van, a battered old Ford Transit that cost £1,500 and broke down constantly, but it was theirs. Word spread. Maria was reliable, thorough, and charged fair prices. In a city where cleaners often didn't show up or did shoddy work, that was rare. By early 2017, they had 15 regular clients. Maria couldn't handle all the work alone anymore. They hired their first employee, a Romanian woman named Elena, who Maria had worked with at the cleaning company. Then a second employee, then a third. Santos Cleaning Services was growing, actually growing. But it wasn't easy. Maria worked 16-hour days sometimes, cleaned during the day, did paperwork in the evenings, handled client calls at night. Carlos worked construction during the week and helped with weekend cleaning jobs. They were exhausted, constantly, but they were building something that belonged to them. In 2018, 3 years after arriving in the UK with £800, Maria and Carlos had a decision to make. The business was doing well, really well. They had 12 employees now, 30 regular clients, revenue of around £8,000 a month. But Carlos was still working construction, splitting his time between 2 jobs, barely sleeping. "You need to quit," Maria told him one Sunday morning as they were doing the accounts together. "Come work on the business full time. We need someone to manage the logistics, deal with suppliers, handle the big commercial contracts I'm starting to get." Carlos looked at the numbers.
they were saving around £2,400 a month now, had $15,000 in the business account, $8,000 in personal savings. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Construction pays well. It's steady money." "I'm sure," Maria said. "This is our business, our future. We need to commit to it properly." In April 2018, Carlos handed in his notice at the construction company, started working full-time at Santos Cleaning Services. Within 6 months, they doubled their client base. Carlos was brilliant at organization, creating schedules, managing employees, negotiating contracts. Maria focused on client relationships and quality control. They were a perfect team. By the end of 2018, they had 25 employees and were turning over £15,000 a month. After expenses and wages, they were taking home around £4,000 a month profit between them. More money than they'd ever dreamed of in Brazil. More money than they thought possible when they arrived in the UK with nothing. In 2019, something shifted. Santos Cleaning Services went from being a good small business to something bigger. Maria landed a huge contract, cleaning services for a new office building in Canary Wharf. 5 floors, daily cleaning, £12,000 a month contract. It was terrifying. They'd never handled anything that big before. They had to hire 10 new staff just for that one contract. Had to buy new equipment, had to train people properly. But they did it, and they did it well. The property management company was so impressed that they offered Santos Cleaning Services contracts for 3 more buildings. By mid-2019, the business was turning over £35,000 a month. They had 40 employees, a proper office in Stratford, 3 vans, professional equipment. Maria and Carlos were earning around £8,000 a month take-home after all expenses. They moved out of the house share in East Ham, finally, after 4 years, and rented a nice 2-bedroom flat in Ilford. £1,400 a month, but they could afford it now. They bought proper furniture, a new TV, good quality food. They could afford to eat out occasionally, to buy new clothes without feeling guilty. Maria sent money home to her mother in Brazil every month, paid back everyone they'd borrowed from, helped Carlos's cousin who helped them when they first arrived. But the most important thing they did was start saving seriously. Saving for a deposit on a house. Because that was the dream. That was what all of this was for. Not just success, not just money, but security, ownership, a real home.
In October 2020, in the middle of the pandemic when everything was chaos and uncertainty, Maria and Carlos applied for a mortgage. They had £45,000 saved, 5 years of working 70-hour weeks, 5 years of sacrifice, 5 years of putting every spare penny away. The mortgage broker looked at their application skeptically. "You're self-employed," he said. "That makes it harder. And you've only been in business for 4 years. "We have accounts," Maria said, pushing forward 3 years of filed accounts. "We have steady income. We have 40 employees. We're profitable." The broker reviewed everything. The business was legitimate, tax returns were filed, income was proven and steady. "All right," he said, "let's see what we can do." 2 months later, they got approved, a £175,000 mortgage. With their £45,000 deposit, they could buy a house up to £220,000. In December 2020, 5.5 years after arriving in the UK with 2 suitcases and £800, Maria and Carlos bought a house. A proper house. 3 bedrooms, a garden, a driveway, in a quiet street in Romford, Essex. £218,000. The day they got the keys, Maria cried. Not sad tears. Not even happy tears exactly, just overwhelming emotion, relief, pride, disbelief. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. Carlos's father, the one who'd said they'd be back in 6 months, flew over from Brazil to visit. He walked around the house, speechless, looked at the business, met the employees, saw what his son and daughter-in-law had built. "I was wrong," he said quietly to Carlos. "I'm proud of you, both of you." Maria's mother came to visit too.
stood in the kitchen, the beautiful modern kitchen with granite worktops and new appliances, and said, "You did it, Minafia. You really did it." Today, in 2024, Santos Cleaning Services employs 53 people. They have contracts with major property management companies across East London. They turn over £60,000 a month. Maria and Carlos each take home around £7,000 a month salary from the business. The house in Romford is worth around £280,000 now. They've renovated it, new kitchen, new bathroom, extended the living room. It's beautiful. They have 2 children now, Isabella, born in 2021, and Lucas, born in 2023. Both British citizens, both growing up with opportunities their parents never had. Isabella goes to a good primary school. They can afford music lessons, swimming lessons, all the things that build confidence and skills. They drive a nearly new car, nothing flashy, but reliable and comfortable. They take holidays, proper holidays, flying back to Brazil once a year to see family, occasionally going to Spain or Portugal. But despite all the success, Maria and Carlos haven't forgotten where they came from. They still work hard, maybe not 70-hour weeks anymore, but they're hands-on in the business. Maria still personally checks on new clients. Carlos still handles the logistics. They employ mainly immigrants, people from Brazil, Poland, Romania, Bangladesh, Nigeria, people who remind them of themselves 8 years ago, people who need a chance. We pay properly, Maria insists, always above minimum wage, always legal contracts, always with respect, because we remember what it's like to be exploited, to be treated like you don't matter. Their employees are loyal. Turnover is low. People stay because they're treated well, because Maria and Carlos understand the immigrant experience, the fear, the exhaustion, the determination. But it hasn't all been smooth. There were hard times, really hard times. In 2020, during the first COVID lockdown, they lost half their clients overnight. Offices closed, businesses shut down. Maria and Carlos had to make impossible decisions. Lay off 20 staff members, people they'd trained, people who depended on them. It was devastating. Maria didn't sleep for weeks, worried the business would collapse, worried they'd lose everything they'd built. They used their personal savings to keep some staff on, took out a £20,000 business loan, and pivoted to offering deep cleaning services for homes and essential businesses. Slowly, painfully, they rebuilt. By late 2021, they were back to full capacity. There were other challenges too. Discrimination. Even in 2024, even with a successful business, Maria sometimes gets treated differently. Clients who speak slowly and loudly to her, assuming she doesn't understand English. Competitors who complain that immigrants are taking British jobs. Carlos has faced similar prejudice. People who assume he's just a cleaner, not a business owner. Who are surprised when he speaks confidently about contracts and finances. But they push through. They prove themselves every single day. With quality work, with professionalism, with results. What's the secret to their success? Maria and Carlos are quick to share their lessons. First, Maria says, you have to be willing to start at the bottom. Really start at the bottom. We cleaned toilets. We worked cash-in-hand jobs. We lived in a tiny room with mold on the walls. You can't be too proud. You do what you have to do. Second, Carlos adds, you save everything. Every single penny you don't absolutely need, you save it. We didn't eat out for 3 years. We didn't buy new clothes unless the old ones had holes. We didn't go to the cinema or take holidays. We just worked and saved. And third, Maria continues, you learn. Learn English. Learn the culture. Learn how business works here. I spent my evenings at the library reading books about starting a business in the UK. Carlos watched YouTube videos about accounting and tax. You can't succeed if you don't understand the system. And fourth, Carlos says, you take calculated risks. Starting the business was a risk. Quitting my construction job was a risk. Buying the house was a risk. But they were calculated. We had savings. We had a plan. We didn't just jump blindly. And fifth, Maria finishes, you never give up. People will tell you it's impossible, that immigrants can't succeed, that you should just accept your lot. Ignore them. Prove them wrong. We did. Looking back now, 9 years after that terrifying flight to Heathrow, Maria and Carlos can barely recognize themselves. The scared 28-year-old who could barely order a coffee in English is now a confident business owner who negotiates contracts worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. The exhausted 31-year-old labourer covered in construction dust is now a respected entrepreneur who speaks at local business events about immigrant success. They own a beautiful home, they run a thriving business, they're raising 2 children who will grow up bilingual, bicultural, with opportunities their parents never had. But they haven't forgotten the struggle, the fear, the exhaustion, the moments of doubt. Sometimes I drive past that house in Eastham, the one where we shared a room the size of a cupboard, and I remember how it felt, how desperate we were, how scared. We keep a photo from those days, from our first month in the UK. We look so young, so tired, so out of our depth. We look at it whenever things get hard now, to remember how far we've come. Their story isn't unique in the details. There are thousands of immigrant success stories across the UK, people from all over the world who arrive with nothing and build something remarkable. But it's unique in the commitment, in the sacrifice, in the sheer determination to succeed against impossible odds. Maria and Carlos could have given up, should have given up probably a dozen times over. When their money ran out in the first month, when they became illegal immigrants living in fear, when they worked 16-hour days for minimum wage, when COVID hit and the business nearly collapsed. But they didn't. They kept going, kept working, kept believing that if they just pushed hard enough, long enough, they could make it. And they did. This story makes us question our assumptions about immigrants, doesn't it? About who succeeds and why. About what's possible when people are given a chance. Maria and Carlos weren't special. They didn't have exceptional skills or education. They didn't have family money or connections. They didn't speak the language well. What they had was determination, work ethic, willingness to sacrifice, and a belief that they deserved better than the life they were born into. They came to the UK because they wanted opportunity. They wanted to work. They wanted to build something. And they did exactly that. They didn't take anyone's job. They created 53 jobs. They didn't burden the system. They pay taxes, contribute to the economy, employ British citizens. They're exactly the kind of immigrants the UK should be proud to have, the kind that make the country stronger, more diverse, more dynamic. But how many Maria and Carloses are out there right now? How many immigrants are working brutal hours in minimum wage jobs, saving every penny, dreaming of owning their own home? How many are facing discrimination and prejudice but pushing through anyway? How many are building businesses that will